Hello, I'm Kara from Kara Taro, and I may be one of the oldest people that is including on this hashtag now. Even though I'm a year late, I thought the questions were fascinating and thoughtful, and I so appreciate the three young women who put this together. And sorry, gals, to me, you are young women. I'm 65, I will be turning 66 this year, and I have to start by saying my primary career for 10 years now is being senior caregiver to my parents. First, my mother and I took care of my father as he declined, and he died 8 years ago. And then for the past more than 3 years, I've been the sole caregiver for my mother, who turns 101 in a couple months. She's still mentally very sharp, but physically extremely frail. So right when I set up and was just ready to push the start button, she rang the bell for me to come help her get to the toilet and to bring lunch to her. So that's how my life goes. A little bit more about my background and then where I am now. I was a career professional stage actress. That often meant I had another side job at the same time while I was working on stage. I was very lucky to work full-time in Washington, D.C. I also toured for the Kennedy Center in one of their children's programs. And then I did a little bit of television, a little bit of film. You can see me for just like a brief nonce in a Clint Eastwood movie, Absolute Power. I did a television special, which would be long gone now. It's called Urkel Passes a Bill, and it was part of a Bill Clinton special. That's when I was living in DC. Then I went to California, and I lived there for 10 years where I was pursuing acting, but I was old for the market. I went out there, I think at 40s, and I was old for no, I'm sorry, 45. And so for the market, as far as they were concerned, I was dead. I don't exist. Fortunately, I'd had a very strong professional stage career. My career included voiceover and always included singing because I come from a family of musicians. I grew up playing different instruments. While I was in LA, I met my marvelous first harp teacher. I had always wanted to play harp. I am now a harp teacher myself. Coming back home to take care of my parents, I was a classical music radio host and producer for 6 years. I had the rarity of winning 3 Associated Press awards for my music education programs. And then I left to take care of my parents because of what they needed at the time. And it took me a while to this is a very rural area. Even the area where I was on the radio was a very rural area. It's the far eastern shore of Maryland on the east coast of the United States. And so I was also teaching harp. I also teach cello and voice. I became adjunct harp instructor at the university here, Salisbury University, just not long before I left the radio station. Having won those 3 awards, I kind of felt that I had done all I could do. And then it was a situation of harassment from the guy who ran the new manager of the station. So I left filing formal complaints. Nothing was done, of course. But he ended up being tossed out a little bit later because of who he was. So now I continue teaching privately, but as I said, I'm in a very rural area. I'm about 20 minutes outside of the college town in the woods. So a lot of people would think it's too isolated. Having lived in Los Angeles for 10 years, I have such great appreciation for it here living in the woods. You'll see some of my other videos. I'm just walking around the property. So I'm here as full-time caregiver for my mother. You may hear the bell ring during the course of this, and I'll have to stop and do what I do to take care of her. Fortunately, the last month or so, I found a couple additional caregivers because I have re-injured an old arm injury and injured my back because I have to lift her 16 to 20 times a day. So that's kind of the full range of who I am, except to say that as a working artist, once I matured as an artist, I realized what I was really interested in was what I call bringing everything to the table. And I've even given talks at festivals about this, integrating your full self, all of your interests into your artistic work. And I bring that same mindset to my work with the tarot. Okay, so then as far as my background with tarot, I began quite young. I've said this before, we had a school program where you could buy books, and 2 books, I think, a month. And one of the offerings was, I believe, a perforated tarot deck, Rider-Waite-Smith, and the Eden Gray book. So I got those 2. And so that was my introduction. It was over my head. I think I was only about 8, 9, somewhere between 9 and 11, I guess. And at the same time, my ex-sister-in-law was interested in it, or maybe a couple years later, she was interested in it and did some readings, and she is someone that used the readings for manipulation and control. So then right away from it being too difficult for me when I was younger, because I was on my own, I didn't have someone teaching me it, but I loved the artwork. That's what drew me to it, was the artwork. I just loved the artwork of the cards. And so I did read the book, so I had that initiation into it. And then I said this negative situation with my sister-in-law, and who used tarot, astrology, and a fortune teller all to denigrate me and to quash my dreams. Fortunately, I'm the kind of person that I'm kind of like, well, you're wrong. I'm going to do my thing anyway. And so then I went and had my career. And I don't consider my acting career to be over. In my music career, I specifically incorporate my investigations and biographies of musicians. So one of my catchphrases is about illuminating the lives of artists. So a lot of my music programs are about that, about biography combined with music from the time period to illuminate the social world of the artist as they were creating. So that's a long introduction, and I'm sorry. How long have I been participating in the witchcraft online space? Well, I don't identify as a witch at all. I am a Christian tarot reader and mystical. I believe in Christian mysticism. That's another long story. My religious path from a rather fundamentalist upbringing and high church upbringing to leaving the church for a long time and then working in the church and then finding my own path that kind of blended these various spiritual interests of me. Most recently, it was reading and really immersing myself in the life of Teresa of Avila. So I've been in the online space as a musician for just eight years. Just right before my father died was my first music video on YouTube. I've been on Facebook much longer, but again, my focus would have been more personal and music related at that point. So one of the things I want to do, and my answers to this, is I see a lot of parallels in the music community, especially the harp community and the tarot community, because the harp world is of necessity a very small world. There aren't a whole lot of us. And it's kind of a niche. It is overwhelmingly female, and yet the few men in the space are lifted up and hailed as experts. And it's done as much by the women in the group as it, so it's all of this feminist recognition stuff between the two communities. I see those parallels, which, and it doesn't mean that the men aren't accomplished. It's just, there are very accomplished women who get no light shown on them, or very little light shown on them. What practices and topics do I discuss primarily? So I have only been on, I guess, TarotTube for a little over a year, I think, because that's when I said, I'm going to get really serious about this again. I'm going to go back to square one. I'm going to really dive deep. And this is what a friend of mine said to me. She said, when you're interested in something, you dive deep. So even though she'd been doing tarot much longer, she recognized that I just went right in. But she didn't know that I had this history either, of this extended history with the cards, off again, on again. I had cards at the time when I started working at the church in Los Angeles, and I tossed them because I thought that was, I couldn't blend the two. And then I through my work at the church, actually, started to realize that I can, because I can forge my own spiritual path. So I primarily just discuss tarot. I sort of look at it as an opportunity to grow alongside people. And I am one of those people that completely believes in continued life growth, continued education, and whatever field you're in, or whatever new field you're in, the seriousness of purpose. I'm a Virgo. Hello, I'm a Virgo. And I fit a lot of those standard tropes about Virgos. So now, topic one, impact on community. So obviously I haven't been in this community for a long time. I don't have a long range experience with this particular community. However, because of my background in the arts and my observation always as an outsider in workplace issues, because I was usually temping while I was pursuing my acting work. So I worked in many more work environments than most people do, because I was temping in and around DC and also in LA. And then, so being an artist is in itself a niche community, and then the music community, the harp community within the music community, and then the tarot community. I have these observations, these life observations, which I think very much fit within this context of the discussion. So what is my personal reasoning and inspiration behind sharing my online practice? It was really to force myself to be regular about it, and to share that, and to hopefully illuminate and share my growth alongside other people who wanted that, whatever the type of thing that I'm doing. And if you go to my page, you'll see there are a couple different ways that I do things. I will say one of my intentions was, having watched TarotTube longer than having participated in it, is that I did not want to be as involved in this commercialized aspect of it. The unboxing, you'll see I do very, very few unboxings, because it just seems to be kind of a flagrant consumerism, which doesn't appeal to me. So I have striven to, if I'm going to talk about something, I try to do it with more depth of having used it. I don't always. I do some deck flip throughs, but I try to keep those very short. What am I looking to achieve by participating in the community? Do I seek to educate, learn, or connect? I kind of misread this question at first. I thought, participating in this, what do I hope to achieve? And that would be just connection and hearing others and putting in my perspective, both from age and an interconnectivity between my various interests. But what did I look to seek to educate, learn, or connect? As I think I've already said, connection and education alongside my own learning or relearning, because that's what it was for me. It was relearning with a much more intentional focus than I had previously done. How do I believe social media as a whole has impacted the community? Well, it's impacted everything. And I can't speak for this particular community, but it definitely has impacted the arts community. I am a firm believer in anything that you're on. Like, I am primarily on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. So short form, I've had no interest in because that's not who I am. And aside from the international political aspects of control of those other things, but which are real, I will say. You know, I know some people don't think so, but they're real. They're real concerns, international concerns. But where was I? Of course, it's impacted the community, and it has impacted in a way that many other people have noted, which is the commercialism. The moment you get on film, and I know this as an actress, the moment you get on film, it's a construct. You know, I thought about where I was going to sit for this. I thought about my lighting, what I was wearing. Those are all constructs. Those are all presentation. And in that respect, and we get to this later in the later questions, it's not real. So there is, and then this naive and lovely thing of the people who aren't used to being on social media, who do these horrible, horrible videos, and their content isn't really necessarily anything earth-shattering, or they have a voice that no one in the world wants to listen to for longer than a minute at a time. Those are the things that, those are kind of endearing about the community, because those are people that wouldn't normally have a voice, and certainly wouldn't normally have a forum or a way of finding a community outside of what my friend calls, you know, being a lonely lady sitting in her basement with her tarot cards. Which I had to tell her, I have now joined those ranks. I am now, I said, they are me and I am we. And she and I laugh about that. She's one of my long-term theater friends. So yeah, the presentationalism of this and the performative aspect, naturally, the moment you turn on a camera, you cannot get away from those parts of how it affects the community. And as others have said, the commercialism and the growth of the industry of selling to people in the occult communities. Can't get away from that. How do I think social platforms such as TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube have each impacted education, sharing, and information? Shout out to Mary Grace Faroon. She's one of the last videos that I watched before I sat down to do this, and I've always enjoyed her content, even though her slant on things is different from mine. But I think I missed this. No, I said I'm a Christian tarot reader, and you know, she acknowledges the Christian roots within her practice, and the interplay between those things with her practice, even though she does consider herself a witch. I don't know TikTok. I mean, I have friends that are on TikTok. As I said, it never interested in me because it seemed best for games. And yeah, I'm not a game gal. Instagram is great for cultivating how you want to present things in picture form. I personally think Instagram was created for and does best with pictures. Although I do add content to it. I'm actually, it's Lent. It started yesterday, and I actually am taking a Facebook and Instagram break for Lent. It also has to do with what's going on with the politics here in the United States, which are depressing and disgusting and mentally draining. And on Facebook in particular, I can't get away from it. So that's why I had taken a 3-day break, and as biblically, and it was good. So I'm taking a full length break for Lent, 6 weeks. That'll be hard. But a necessary regrouping, I think, for me. And of course, it won't stop my practice. It will just means my practice will be offline. Horace! So I think YouTube is fantastic. And I think I said, I do think these formats are all, it is what you make of it. If you are careful about who you follow and who you interact with, all of them are good. And I have made real life friends from the social communities, which is invaluable, especially for someone like me that's living in an incredibly rural area. So I think YouTube is the best for Facebook, I think we all have learned, is not a place to have an in-depth or serious conversation, because you're always going to have some troll shooting something down. Yes, we do have trolls on YouTube, but it's more mitigated, and you get a chance to do long-form journalism or long-term presentations, just like PBS does long-form journalism, and NPR, the station that I worked on, does long-form journalism, so that you're not stuck with this soundbite criterion. Instagram has helped me integrate my arts background into how I present my tarot, and that's was conscious. I didn't have to do it, and then I started having people saying what lovely presentations I have. And as I said, I think Instagram is a visual format. In consuming witchcraft content, is it becoming a substitute for practice? Now, this is where it's an interplay with music, because, if you substitute the word music, is consuming music content becoming a substitute for practice? Absolutely. Absolutely. I have students who could spend their whole day watching other people play the harp rather than practicing. And I can get sucked in that too. Now, the good side is you can hear a piece that you're about to start playing. In some cases, you can hear 20 different people play it and really particularize the interpretation that you want on that piece of music. But nothing replaces the actual practice that you have to do alone in your room. And it is the same for your spiritual practices. Nothing takes the place of your actual practice done with focus and intention, alone, with no cameras. Topic 2, influencer authenticity. Out of what I share on social media, how much of it is staged versus reality? I already addressed that. The moment you turn on the camera, you're making decisions about how you're presenting. Just some people do it better than others. Do I think there is an element of censorship in online spaces? How do I decipher what is appropriate to share online versus what to keep private? Is this based on social media etiquette or personal preferences? Of course, there is an element of censorship. There is the outside censorship of the platforms, but there is the very real self-censorship that goes on. And for one thing, just smart. You're going to keep some things private and offline, because once something's online, it's no longer private. So I think it's a combination of all of those things. And the answer is, of course, there is censorship. And so for that reason, you can't expect to get everything you need from online content. Have I ever encountered or heard of grifters in the community? Yes, early on. And it was one of the companies that sells to tarot users, and I think they also sell books, and let's just call them tragic.com, spelled with a CK at the end. That's not the name of the company, but it's close enough you can figure it out. Out of 3 orders with them, I received 1.5. When I tried to make it, and the largest order I did not get. And when I tried to hold them accountable for it, when I reported them for it, they created a fake invoice. So it's like, really? You have that much energy to create a fake invoice? Why not just send me the stuff I ordered? But that's one of the reasons I held them accountable and reported them, is that, if you're going to try to steal from me, you're going to use up that money you got from me in another way. I'm going to make sure you have, even if it's just internal time and energy, that you're paying for it. That was early on in my seriousness of getting back to a serious focus. And as far as people misrepresenting themselves, it's been that way since the beginning of time. You have to be a careful consumer. You have to be careful, especially spiritually, whom you open yourself up to, because on that level, people can really damage you and impact your growth long term. And certainly some of the church communities I was in did that and drove me away from the church until I found my own way back in, which was through the Power of Myth series with Bill Moyer and Joseph Campbell, where he said something about if you were raised with a particular religious structure, your chances of having the deepest religious experience are within that structure. Instead of trying to do the buffet of religious choices and picking something from each one, if you are looking for your depth of religious experience, your best chance is to stick with the one that you were either raised with or that you've spent the most time with. And then as far as like Christianity goes, it's because a lot of people, even within the church, that are thinking they're practicing Christianity are really not serious about being in depth. They're there for a community or for power or other things. I mean, that's true of every community. So grifters, they exist in the world. They're in every community, no matter how supposedly serious the community is. What tools are helpful to decipher misinformation, and how can we as a community prevent widespread misinformation? I don't really think we can. As I said, I think it's always existed. And then other groups, I think, for example, many churches are specifically invested in spreading misinformation about the occult community, and vice versa. I've seen occult community members who are specifically interested in spreading disinformation about Christianity simply because they don't know enough about it. They haven't spent enough time in the depth of the spirituality of it. They've been on that surface level of it. And I think it's the same thing, is that usually when Christians are bad-mouthing the occult community, they're getting their information from movies and TV. And, so they're not really addressing how the tools are used. And there are valid things that the church could be talking about within the occult community that say, if you call yourself a Christian, then you can't do these things. And that's what we call spiritual discernment. And I think the same thing probably exists within the witchcraft community. If you call yourself a witch, if you're serious about being a witch, there are these things you're not going to be doing because they don't go along with this path and this belief structure. How does a large following impact the perception of the creator? Does this immediately make them an expert, or are there other assumptions as to why as to why they may have a large following. Absolutely, a large following has absolutely nothing to do with quality of content. Any adult should know this by now. I mean, let's look at the most popular movies are the Marvel movies. Do they compare in any shape or form with these rare jewels of small French films in terms of their content, their depth, the quality of the acting? No, there's no comparison. The most popular is almost never the best that you're going to get. You have to seek this out. You have to seek it out with every fiber of your being. You have to, for me, if something is incredibly popular, I tend not to see it. If I see large viewing numbers, I tend to, because there are all these other things involved. Having worked in acting, I can tell you the things that get you up here, that get you chosen to even be part of this group, don't have to do with content. Youth and beauty is a big one, especially for women. It's youth and beauty. And I think you can see that. You know, it doesn't mean that these people aren't serious. It doesn't mean that they don't have something to offer. But that's not this coalesced gem of, you know, a diamond that has come out of the coal. It's just like, and with acting, as somebody who comes from a stage background, you know, everybody says, oh, Meryl Streep, she's the best because she's done all of this. I know at least 100 actresses that are every bit as good as she is, but who didn't get the young opportunities that she got. And like Judi Dench and Colleen Dewhurst, all these people acknowledge luck as part of the component. The really serious people in any industry acknowledge that luck is part of it. And part of that luck is youth and beauty. Like Judi Dench was discovered young. And most of the people that you know their names of actors and actresses were discovered young. Often we're willing to do nudity when other people weren't willing to do nudity, because that's what gets eyes. That's what, and once you get the eyes, you get the next opportunity and the next opportunity and the next opportunity. And you kind of really have to blow things. If you've gotten that kind of a start, you have to blow things. Meanwhile, there is this baseline of incredibly brilliant people that are never going to get noticed because they didn't get that. So absolutely not. Popularity does not have any relationship to worth, and may even have an inverse relationship to worth. How does one maintain the balance of authenticity in content creation? I think everybody has to figure that out for themselves. If you're trying to do things for views, you're not being authentic. If that's your goal. I learned this in the harp world, because in the harp world, even the biggest name harpist might only have 300 followers. You know, you're lucky if you break 1,000 followers in the music world. Most of the harpists that I know have followings of a couple hundred. It doesn't mean they're not good. It doesn't mean they're not worthwhile. It doesn't mean they're not great teachers. They don't have that kind of following. So I learned that in that community. So I have an abysmal number of followers on my YouTube, and it's just like, I'm just sharing what I feel like sharing from moment to moment. If I think of something interesting that I want to try, such as I tried tarot songs, because it combined my music interest. Songs in tarot, where I show the tarot cards that go along with the lyrics. I think I've only done one of those. I may do more. But so that, again, is like, you create your own authenticity. It has to be part of what you want to do. If you're just trying to get views, you're not being authentic. You're being a Kardashian of the YouTube world. And don't think highly of them, let's just say. But if you are someone who values views and the perks that come with your views, and the power that comes with the views, then you're going to think they're fantastic. Topic 3, imposter syndrome and FOMO. When I follow other creators in the community space, does it make me feel genuinely inspired and empowered, or does it create feelings of FOMO and being less than? I tend to only follow people who make me feel inspired. I probably will, because I'm a senior caregiver, because my resources are limited, I don't have the setups that other people have, and I don't have the people who are incredibly good with graphics and editing of their videos. That's my FOMO, is I wish I had the time, the energy, the knowledge, and the capacity to create videos like that, but I don't. I do what I can in my limited time. I also have chronic illnesses myself. So in addition to being a caregiver, I have to be really careful with my own time and energy. And of course that goes to my live students before it goes to the videos. No, I tend to only consume what I find inspiring. And the reason I wanted to do this hashtag is because I find the depth of thought in these hashtags to be, to touch on a lot of my different life worlds and how they interact together. And so that it was inspiring. If I experience FOMO, has it ever left me feeling vulnerable to be taken advantage of financially or otherwise? An example would be the need to purchase the latest popular product or book to fit in. It's certainly been the case with buying tarot decks. I never aspired to buying as many tarot decks as I have now, or having a collection. That was never my aspiration. But I will say, because of my arts background, I started viewing it differently. I didn't view it as I only need one deck to work with. I started thinking of it as like, I don't just have one book on my bookshelves. I have hundreds of books. And whether I've even read them or not yet, they're there if I want to explore that world and that writer's viewpoint. And when you combine it with visual arts, you've really got a lot of things that fire on my synapses. And but yeah, definitely, if it weren't for social media, I probably would only have 10 decks instead of 10 times that. But it's not for fitting in. It's not for FOMO. It's because wanting to prepare for that potential client who has an interest that I don't have, and to have a range available. As I said, my friend told me, when you dive deep. And it's because I'm always trying to think in terms of what's going to be able to make me touch on something for the widest audience. Again, not for numbers, but because I want to have that breadth of speaking. When practicing my craft, do I find myself comparing what I do to what I've been seeing people do online? Only in terms of if I see someone doing something online that is a new thought to me, or I think it's interesting to try, I will do that on my Instagram. If somebody puts out an interesting layout, I will use their layout and credit them. And that's how I think you support other people in the community, as well as trying something new. And then you find out whether you really like it or not, and whether you want to maintain it as part of your practice. I think that's maintaining an openness more than, it's not FOMO for me anyway. It's just, as Mary Grace Faroon said, I don't care what other people think. You know, I'm 65. You know, nobody's turning to me because they want to have the most popular thing. So, in what ways do I combat imposter syndrome? I have dealt with this in all aspects of my artistic life, in terms of all you can do is do your preparation and be the best you can be at the moment. Once you realize that we're all always learning and growing, and it's like, if there's a bad performance, there's a bad performance. You learn from it, you go on. And hopefully I've instilled that with my students. It's like, it's a wrong note, so what? It's a wrong note. It's just one note in the whole piece. And that's how you are authentic. If your focus is on being clear and being true and your highest self in anything that you're doing, and pouring everything you can into it, then it's going to be of worth to someone. I've always been an introvert, and I've never been a particularly popular person. I've often been highly respected, but not popular. And you learn those differences in life, and it is what it is. And all you can do is be your best self. What would my practice look like without the social media influence of other creators? I probably wouldn't have thought through making more artistic layouts. Without social media, that's not so much other creators, it's just me. I wouldn't have thought about that. Again, the people who have great editing skills or great graphic skills, I still don't have that, and there are times I think, how in the world do you do that? And then I realize a lot of times it's because people have spent a lot of time doing it that I don't have. So once again, that's me. Okay, topic 4, capitalizing off community. Oh, as an actress, as someone in media, can I say something? As I sip my tea, it's coffee. There's a rule in acting, don't talk about it, just do it. You don't have to tell me you're grabbing your cup of tea and you're about to take a sip of tea. It would be called bad acting if it were in theater. And it's a media skill that, if you're gonna do it, you don't have to talk about it because you're doing it. And the amount of time wasted in videos saying, I'm going to sit down and get my cup of tea. And now I'm sitting down and I have my cup of tea. And now I'm sipping my cup of tea. This is just media savvy. This is production savvy. So if I can give you one little grain of thing, it's like, stop talking about your tea. Just drink your tea. I mean, unless you're selling the tea, in which case, tell us what it is. My favorite tea is jasmine tea, and I like it very strong, and I like it hot or cold. But this is coffee. Capitalizing off community. Do I consider online communities as equally valid as in-person communities? I've already answered that. I've created real-life friends from the online community, and so grateful. And not just YouTube, also Facebook and Instagram, come to think of it. And that has to do with, I don't follow a lot of people. I'm not keeping up with a lot of people. I keep up with the people who are supportive of, encouraging to me, and I try to reciprocate. How have online occult witchcraft communities impacted me as a person and practitioner? What I said before, I get some good ideas and figure out if that's something I want to incorporate. It's like I never had an altar until I kind of hit on this world. I just kept my cards in a drawer and, read my cards. And then I realized, okay, that is kind of something that would be, especially as I get more decks and I want to have 3 or 4 laid out, I have an altar of sorts. It's the top of my bureau. Yeah. What are some of the dangers of the current phenomenon of capitalizing off the witchcraft community? Commercialism, plain and simple. All the aspects that I've mentioned before in terms of, I would not be the first person to compare tarot to the beauty community. And that's why one reason I mentioned the Kardashians is like all the things that helped make the Kardashians successful, including selling stuff. They exist in any online forum. I tend not to purchase or even view most of that stuff. So But those are dangers, especially for the people who are just getting into it. I personally think one of the reasons we have so many people who are like on TarotTube and in TarotTube, and then suddenly they've left the world and they've become Christians who now are against it. All of that has to do with commercialism and FOMO and trying to create an image before you really are. It's like, I had a harp student who, after studying for less than a year, said, you know, I feel like I'm an imposter. And I'm like, you're not an imposter if you just tell people you're a beginner. You're a beginning harp student, and that's what you are. Own that you're a beginner. Now, if you try to tell them you're a professional that's ready to play weddings and ready to do orchestral work, then you are an imposter. So, you know, just acknowledge who you are and where you are. But see, that's where trying to create a following on social media platforms, if your goal is creating a following, then you have to be an imposter, at least on some, I'm saying, if you have no background, then you have to be an imposter, because you have to present yourself as if you're the real deal when you aren't. Unless you're going to be authentic and say, you know, I'm doing what I'm doing. If you find it interesting, come along. I may have worded something in that last little bit that seems like a smackdown, and it wasn't intended that way. So I tried to clarify it. I hope I did. Have I been personally affected by capitalizing off this, or have I witnessed someone else being affected? Well, I just gave the example. I think the people that come into the community, try to build up a following, and then leave the community because they now think it's evil. I think those are all people that have been affected by the capitalizing of the occult world. And they were never really there to begin with. They didn't get that deeply into it. So they're going back to something that just says, oh, you weren't successful, so that's a terrible world. You were unhappy because you were trying to be something that you weren't in the first place. And I think I said previously, I think it goes in both directions. I think there are people that left the church because they didn't really get deeply enough into the spirituality of their particular faith, that they understood what transcended all the superficial stuff. So they left and they went somewhere else, and now they want to badmouth it. Or they were abused, and that happens in any community. You can get abused in any community where there's a power dynamic of some sort. So should there be paywall communities and online courses? Of course. Of course. My only, I will say, I won't give his name, long-term respected guy in the tarot world. He often does a lot of freebie interviews that show up on YouTube, and he's a horrible speaker. He's incredibly brilliant and knowledgeable, but the breadth of his knowledge means he has real trouble answering just a concise question. Well, I did an online course with him that was guided by a PowerPoint presentation that he created. So he was much more linear. He was not completely linear, because he is who he is, but he was much more linear. He was much more focused. He kept on topic, and that was so worthwhile. And I would not have access to that without having paid something for it. And I think that's I have met some wonderful supportive teachers by just finding somebody that was talking about, I'm very interested in the history. I'm interested in the history of everything. I did classical music, classical theater. I'm interested in history. So when I find somebody that is knowledgeable and doing an accessible talk about a particular thing, I enjoy that, and I've made wonderful friends from those teachers in a lot of cases, or writers that I have contacted whom I like their work. So yes, I think they have their place. Does a paywall mean that something is not accessible to everyone? Unfortunately. And you cannot be a member of this community without acknowledging how overwhelmingly white this online community is in all of the formats. To not acknowledge that, and to not acknowledge that the fact that I can have as many decks as I have may be a product of privilege on one level or another. If you can't acknowledge your own privilege, then you can't help combat it in the larger scheme of things. And you can't help make things more equitable without acknowledging them. So we need to be aware of that. And we need to, I personally seek out people that, other races, other cultures that I click with. And if I click with them, then of course we're gonna have interactions that are positive and beneficial. How does one ensure the authenticity of courses, workshops, memberships as a financial investment? Again, buyer beware. You have, you could go through, if you have friends that you could bounce this off of, but that's where I don't even necessarily look to the popularity of the person, but I look for the history of the person. Research them online, and you can get a sense of how they are viewed within the community, and that's when you know that they have something to offer. Whether it makes them a good speaker, as I just said, not necessarily. Does it make them a good teacher? Not necessarily. You're always concerned with that when you're doing like workshops and one-off things, is that everyone doesn't have the same gifts in terms of presenting information. I mean, the same is true in the harp world. There are discussions about some of the absolute best world-class harpists. Some of them are lousy teachers, just because of who they are and where their interests lie and what their particular skill set with teaching in. I went to a very highly respected teacher who was one of the nastiest teachers I've ever had. And she clearly, because she had a very high price for her lessons, she clearly just had her hand out for the money, and she didn't give a damn about what I was accomplishing. On the flip side, I've had very highly regarded teachers who have just embraced me and supported me and continued to uplift me to even today, and we've become marvelous friends in addition to having initially had a teacher and student relationship. And so that's not, and coincidentally, they were both younger than I am. And so I do think there's something to be said for age and maturity and wisdom and experience, but there are some older people who can't integrate that information into what they're doing. The nasty teacher was my age or older. And so you don't know until but that's why you do as much research as you can. What are some topics of conversation I'd like to see more of within the community? Ageism. And the one I just raised about a lack of diversity. What are my community needs? Well, I mean, I'd love to have a real life community. As I said, I'm in a very isolated rural area. So that would be nice, but I really couldn't take advantage of it. I'm isolated by nature now by being a senior caregiver, is that without someone else here to be on call, I can't leave. Fortunately, I'm an introvert, and I love that. I love not having to leave the house. um, where would I like to feel more held and supported? And I would echo what Mary Grace Faroon said, is that I find that I have cultivated my own supportive environment online. I feel seen and valued by the people that I interact with. And if, I tend not to stick with following the people that I don't feel even an affinity with. There's one highly regarded creator and online personality that I really love her self-presentation. I love her authenticity again. Um, but I found out over time, I hate her taste in art. She's constantly showing these decks and I just think, "Ah!" And so I really don't follow her much anymore. It means her content is still worthwhile, but our taste is so dissimilar, it doesn't feed me. Where do I feel like I'm not truly being seen by my community? I don't really care. Because I'm not interested in numbers and I'm not interested in followers. The people who like what I do follow me, and the people who don't, I don't really care. I went through a long period of stage fright in my heart playing. I've never been afraid as an actress. I love disappearing into someone else for the time I'm on a stage. But as a musician, I'm me. And so I went through about a 2-year period of extended stage fright, and I finally hit on the concept of I'm not performing, I'm sharing. I'm just sharing where I am now. I'm sharing this moment that may have a lot of mistakes in it. It doesn't matter, or what I think are a lot of mistakes in it, because I'm always clued into that. And all I can do is try to be as present as I can be and share. And once you get to that space, you don't care. You're doing the best you can in the moment, and that moment is gone. How can we help each other in removing the external peer pressure and grow in community? I'm not sure we can online. That is something that is part of an online community. And there will always be those people who are only looking at your numbers, only looking at what they can find fault with. That's part of being a public person, and I learned that as an actress. I was very lucky to be a darling of the critics. And it would be very frustrating to some of my friends who'd be in the same show, and they'd be criticized and I'd be praised. But I was always aware it was the luck of the draw, because that same critic would smack me down at some other time, or even make comments to me in person if I met them after a show, which just showed they really didn't understand. Because somebody said, you always choose these far out roles. It's like, no, that's where I get cast. I get cast in wacky roles or very extreme roles. So it's like, I'm just an actress taking the roles that I'm offered. Rarely are you being offered 3 things at the same time and you get to choose. Usually you're offered one at a time. They grow on each other. So I don't think you can remove external pressures. You have to learn how not to be so buffeted by them. How can we as a community come together more with constructive criticism without it seeming shady, passive-aggressive? Again, social media doesn't have a forum for that. One-on-one interactions have a forum for that. But again, who wants to be knocked down in public or have shade thrown at them in public? Coming out of the blue after you're done with something. But I mean, it's true of Facebook, it's true of Instagram, it's true of YouTube. And this is where someone used the phrase, the mindless approbation of social media, which is you get all of these, oh, you're gorgeous, oh, you're lovely, oh, you're kind of, it's like, and I don't get much of that, thank goodness. And the people who want to praise you on one hand and smack you down on the other, as I said, I'm really very careful who I interact with, and then I work on myself, making sure I'm always If they display something that I don't really care for, I say, that's not really me, but that's you, and that's great. And I still value your content, and I value your opinion. That's really all you can do online. If you're going online or making a comment solely to criticize someone, don't bother. You'll be jumped on by people, you'll be called negative. Like, you can't even correct people's grammar, which should be a baseline for making public content. You should basically have good grammar. Just the way as if you're a writer, you need to know how to write. You need to write how to structure sentences. These should be a baseline for creating public content, but they aren't anymore. So, I mean, even if, you get called grammar police, even if you're commenting on an ad where they hired someone to do the grammar of the ad, and they still misspell it, and then it's like, so the short answer is there is no public forum for criticism, unless you want to be smacked down yourself in response by the person or somebody else. Even for tough questions, there is very little space on public media, even for asking someone a tough, pointed question. You have to learn to just don't post it, write it, delete it, because only if you are in a position to have a one-on-one discussion with that person can you ask that question or make that comment. Only then. And the fact of the matter is that if you're in person making that comment or that question, chances are it will be worded differently. And that's, social media gives us a forum for rudeness that has become, unfortunately, now part of our daily life. Who are some of the community members that I look up to that are reliable resources and aspirations? Oh, I have many. Tarot of Dreams 80 is someone that I follow on Instagram, 78 Puertas. I don't know the name for the Spanish number. So 78 doors, or in Spanish, 78 Puertas. Picadam Tarot. These are all Instagram people. I've mentioned Mary Grace Farron several times. They're Tarot Maps, I think is the name of a lady that I follow a lot. I feel like she puts out a lot of content, and so I'm not always interested in everything she does, but I just think she's thoughtful. I tend to follow people who are older. It doesn't mean I don't follow some people who are younger. I tend to not follow people who have really irritating voices, no matter how good their content is, just because I don't want to listen to it. As somebody with a theater background and voice training, and also somebody who was blessed, just naturally blessed with a voice that most people find pleasant, I just can't. There are certain things I can't listen to. And sometimes I'll follow somebody for a week and then realize, not them. Add any further thoughts, comments, or prompt questions of your own. Express further points and offer solutions. I personally don't feel there are a lot of solutions. I think there are things you have to accept as being the nature of the beast. And again, I'd go back to my acting background and say, you don't expect film to be television. You don't expect television to be stage. You're still acting on all three of those, but the way the logistics of how you approach it are different. And you, at a certain point, now we do suffer right now from the whole, the very withdrawn way of presenting things on film, because film can get you, can do a close-up of your eye, and of course my glasses are shading my eyes, sorry. The very small, intimate way that you do film has affected, unfortunately, theater, and then television has this terrible version of it where you say everything as fast as you possibly can while you have absolutely no expression on your face. And that's supposed to impart some seriousness, when all it does is it means you can get the script in under a certain amount of time, and it's horrible acting. And so, good acting requires time, just like a good conversation with a friend. That's why, I do admire French film in that there'll be moments of silence. The film requires very little words, because the camera can get inside the mind through the eyes. So all that to say, I think it's the nature of the beast of social media. It is what it is. You have to just kind of understand what it is, and you can't necessarily do anything about it. As a 65-year-old, I cannot make myself look like I'm 30 years old and, kind of, this averagely attractive young woman that would be desirable to a lot of guys. And, that's not the case. I can't do that, and it would be pathetic if I tried to. And those are the people that get a lot of views. The thing that makes up for that is length of time. Length of time can lend you a longer viewership, so that you can have a more niche content and a more thoughtful content, but that audience is not going to come to you quickly. It's certainly not going to be getting you the number you need to be making money off your YouTube videos. It's just the nature of the beast. So again, I'm very grateful for these questions and the community that went into creating these questions. I'm grateful for the fact that we didn't, that they didn't say we only want witches, we only want practicing witches, and we don't want other people. Because I do think that's an acknowledgement of the whole community, even though this was created for the witch community. It's an acknowledgement that the occult community is not just witches. And then I'm on this far end of it, that is different, I think. And so I appreciate even being able to participate and feeling that it was open enough for me to participate. I appreciate that very much. I hope the things that I say will not be so divergent that they make people angry. And because my response is I really am trying to contribute to the broader conversation, whether or not you agree with me. Because I have my life experience and my perceptions. And I hope you find it interesting that my background dovetails with this. I guess I'd like to hear some prompt questions about sexism and ageism and racism within the community. Do I think there are any easy fixes for that? Maybe not. So in gratitude and in community, although far-flung community, thank you for listening. Thank you for being with me for this extended period of time. And I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day.